Good morning. I call the meeting of Northwest Indiana Regional Plan Commission for Thursday, May 18th. It's 9 a.m. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Hollenbeck, are there any new appointments?
As a matter of fact, Mr. Chairperson, we have none.
Roll call?
Yes. This is an executive board meeting, so I will begin with the executive board members to ensure quorum. Kyle Allen, Kevin Brightsky, Tom Dermody,
Present.
Denise Hebert,
Present.
Bill Emerson,
Present.
Richard Hardaway,
Present.
Justin Keel,
Present.
Sue Lynch,
Here.
Wendy Miss, present, Jim Pressel, Jim Tunn.
Present.
We have a quorum and there are 8.
Thank you.
I will continue on with the rest of the commissioners for a full attendance. Dwayne Art, Jeanette Bax, Thomas Black, Robert Carnahan,
Here.
Bill Carroll, Tim Clayton, Anthony Copeland, Don Kraft,
Here.
Jocelyn Denham, Dinah Dubras, Robert Forster, Connie Bramarosa, Tony Hendricks, Ellen Hunt, here, Jack Geralds, Jane Jordan, here, Scott Keenan, Peter Land, Robert LeMay, Tom McDermott, Lori Mercer, Edward Morales, Matt Murphy, Randall Niemeyer,
Present.
Dwayne Carey, David Peeler, Jerome Prince, Barb Regnitz, Lisa Rosenkrantz, Regina Riddell, Rick Rifa, Tom Schmidt,
Here.
Brian Snedeker, Steve Spivard, Ronald Stone, Gerald Swets, Sharon Zuido,
Here.
Mary Tanis,
Here.
George Topple,
Here.
John Yelkich. So that was a total of 17.
Thank you. Okay, we have no public comment this morning, so we will now go to approval of the minutes from April 20, 2023 from the full commission meeting. Major Director. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Dermody and second by Sue Lynch. Mayor Lynch, is there any discussion? All in favor signify by sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you. The chair has no report this morning. At this time, we'll hear from the executive director.
Great, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Just have 3 quick things. First of all, to introduce our newest staff people, I want to introduce Tom Vanderwood, although Tom is a repeat offender. Worked for NERC prior to my arrival at NERC, but we're glad to have him back. And Wendy, I think, has forgiven me for taking him from Munster, which is his most recent employment. So we're happy to have Tom on board as our new Director of Transportation. Welcome back. And then Ann Weikenot is in the back as our new Transportation Programming and Grants Assistant, and is helping Charles with the Transportation Improvement Program and some other things related to transit and transportation. So we're glad to have her on board as well. And most recently comes to us from Valparaiso University, where she's had a long stretch there. So glad to have you here. So there's some new faces, and we're happy to say we're fully staffed now. So that is a happy and joyous thing. I'm actually going to turn over to Ryan Lissick from Drive Clean Indiana, formerly known as South Shore Clean Cities. We have a strong partnership with Drive Clean Indiana, as I think you know, for our to help with our congestion and air quality and all that sort of thing. So Ryan has something you want to talk about with an upcoming grant opportunity.
Thank you, Ty. So right now we have a great opportunity
as far as charging and fueling infrastructure that is available. It is a federal grant program. There's a total amount of $700 million. This funding would cover 80% off the total cost of publicly available charging and fueling station equipment, which includes propane, natural gas, electric, hydrogen, and this is the perfect opportunity if you're looking at putting charging stations in your cities and towns. It can also be available to local businesses as well. So if there's good locations that you have in mind, this is a great opportunity. We can combine this 80% funding with additional tax credits that are associated with this infrastructure as well to make little to no out-of-pocket costs after it's all said and done. This will be a 5-year program, so if you have wishes and plans to install charging stations in the next 5 years, this is a great opportunity. We will be putting in a NERC partnership across Lake Porter and LaPorte County, so this is a perfect opportunity. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I do have packets, and we can discuss in further detail. We have an internal deadline of May 22nd. The grant is actually due on June 13th, but there's, just like any other grant, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen before. We will keep this as simple as possible. There's very little heavy moves that we will be requiring from the municipalities themselves, so we will be able to make this as seamless and painless as possible. Thank you. Yes.
Does this include Tesla, the variety of chargers to cover all automobiles?
So it has to be a J1722 charging port, and that is the universal port on all vehicles that are being manufactured. The Teslas, they do have an adapter that they can use, and every Tesla driver knows that and has that adapter just in case it's not a Tesla charging station. You can collect a fee as well.
Oh, that's what I was asked, or
Okay.
mentioned, yeah.
Yes, you can collect a fee. It has to be publicly available. It cannot be behind the gate. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
So Ryan, again, you've got some materials and ways that they can contact you.
Absolutely. Business cards, and I got packets to discuss it in further detail. All I would be requesting from folks that are interested is just have a quick 1-hour call to discuss locations. We get some design built. I think total project costs are going to be between $30,000 and $50,000. And once again, that's 80% reimbursable. And in some locations, we would be able to qualify for the additional infrastructure tax credit, which is 30% of the total project cost up to $100,000. So that is a great opportunity. And this all comes from the Inflation Reduction Act.
And the local match is 20%?
Local match is 20%.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Just the last thing I want to say is just to continue to shine a spotlight on an issue that has been very challenging for our region and continues to be, but had some renewed attention recently, which is the issue of blocked rail crossings in our region. If you recall, we formed a rail crossing task force some time ago that met at least 4 times and tried to explore all facets of this issue of trains blocking crossings for more than 10 minutes, ever since the Indiana Supreme Court struck down the ability to ticket trains that were blocking a crossing for more than 10 minutes. And since that court decision to strike down that ability for municipalities to ticket those trains, as we discovered in that rail crossing task force, some trains have been blocking intersections for hours. And so it's been a continual problem, and not just for NERC, nationwide, but in Northwest Indiana, obviously you're well familiar with how many crossings we have here, so we feel it in some ways more acutely. And if you did not see these stories, we received some national attention recently from a ProPublica piece that was published that not only talked specifically about the situation in Hammond, but on their online version had accompanying video literally showing children crawling through train couplings to get to school, and parents helping their children over train couplings to be able to get to school. So as we all know, sometimes seeing an image is much more powerful than just talking about an issue more abstractly. And so that gained more traction. That same story was picked up as a front page, verbatim front page story in the Post Tribune. And then for those of you with Apple products that have access to Apple News, that became a national Apple News feature story also, with an audio interview with the writer of that article. So this continues to be a challenging issue with no clear-cut solution, largely because of federal preemption of the railroads. But there's a renewed attention on this issue, and we as NERC anyway continue to try to look for answers for this. I've contacted all of our congressional delegation folks, and we're continuing to look for solutions and some way to move forward. So just wanted to spotlight that if you did not see those pieces, and let you know that was still very much an issue and has received a new influx of attention nationally now, spotlighting Hammond in particular.
I'd just like to add Norfolk Southern, who we deal with, is absolutely a horrendous partner. They don't care. They don't care about our community. They've blocked, and we're also doing that. So any help from the communities, they report to nobody. They know that, and we'll be glad to do whatever we can.
I'll just add that Carolyn Jackson has introduced a bill at the state level for I don't know how many years to at least ask the railroads to notify a community when they will be blocking a crossing for more than 10 minutes, but that has never made its way out of committee. So that at least there has been some attempt at the state legislature as well. But the reason has been largely the same, it's federal preemption, why that has not gained traction. So very serious issue, and that's all I have in my report, but just wanted to get that back on the table as a matter of regional importance.
Thank you, Tom. Serious. Environmental Management Policy Committee, Mr. Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Environmental Management Policy Committee met on May 4th to review the NWI 2050 Plus plan and the Climate Action Plan. And we also had quite a good discussion about trying to kind of be a little bit of a clearinghouse for grant opportunities for communities and to get the word out on grant opportunities, environmental and otherwise. That's kind of a move that we're trying to make as part of our community, is trying to get all that information kind of centralized and available for communities and kind of spoon-fed, so we have more communities applying for a lot of these grants that are out there. So it's kind of an initiative that we talked quite a bit about at our meeting. June 1st is our next meeting. It's going to be the electric vehicle boot camp. So I know there's that deadline for the grant opportunity, so don't wait for that boot camp to apply for that grant. But that's what we talked about then. I also wanted to announce, is in the spirit of communities working together, that the Dyer two-stage ditch on Hart Ditch, our county regulated drain, in partnership with our office, the County Drainage Board, Franciscan Hospitals, Little Calumet River Basin Commission, and the County Highway Department. So it was a great partnership to do this two-stage ditch project that was improved water quality, it improved flood storage for the area. Just won the Indiana MS4 Partnership Annual Award for Excellence in Best Management Practices. So that was Tuesday at their annual conference downstairs. So I'm very proud of that. And I see Mary Tansis here from Dyer is a big supporter of those clean water initiatives. So I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. And we hope to see you at the June 1st meeting right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emerson. Finance and Personnel, Ms.
Thank you, Chairman Hardaway. The Finance and Personnel Committee met this morning to review financial reports for December of 2022, as well as April 2023. We also reviewed the bank statements and the claim registers for April 2023. There are two actions that we're bringing before you for consideration today. And the first is a request for the approval of Resolution 2308, authorizing the submittal of the EDA for year-end 2023, the Partnership Planning Grant, and Dennery is going to share a little information about that for us.
Yes, this is a resolution that basically pledges the local match for the partnership planning grant. This is an annual grant that's available to EDDs in Indiana. So the local match for New York City is $70,000, and that's matched with $70,000 from the EDA. And this allows us to continue to advance the work that's in the SEDS as well as other economic development related initiatives.
Thank you. The committee has a favorable recommendation for the executive board to approve that. Do you want to do that? I have one more little sentence to read. Do you want me to read it, or would you like to approve this first?
Your choice.
I'll go, one more. I think you all can remember and can vote accurately, so we'll go on to the next item. The second request our committee is for approval for the resolution 2309 authorizing the execution of a grant agreement with U.S. DOT, Department of Transportation, and NDOT under the year-end 21 RAISE grant program for the Marquette Greenway project. And Ty, our executive director, Mr. Warner, has additional information on that.
Sure. Similar to the previous resolution, which you'll need to vote on, and then this one as well. This other resolution also authorizes me to enter. The other one was to authorize me to submit the application. This resolution in 2309 authorizes me to enter into an agreement with the Indiana Department of Transportation so that they can. There's been a challenge with the Marquette Greenway RAISE grant funds that we've received and being able to orchestrate how those dollars are actually moving through the system to be able to get us to where we can actually obligate those funds in accordance with the grant agreement. So after multiple discussions, the Indiana Department of Transportation has agreed to be the pass-through agency to receive that RAISE grant fund, those RAISE grant funds from the federal government, and then they'll just pass them directly on to NERC. They won't be taking any responsibility for the project management or anything related to the actual construction of the trail, but at least in terms of the financial component of it, it's purely a financial mechanism to be able to smooth things out and help us meet the goal of what we need to do for that grant a little more quickly. So that resolution just authorizes me to enter into that agreement with NDOT to receive those funds.
And that's a huge amount of money.
17.8. Correct.
Thank you very much. The Finance and Personnel Committee also has a favorable recommendation to move forward with that. And the Finance and Personnel Committee will not have a meeting in June, and our next meeting will be on July 20th at 8 p.m. We'll see that committee then. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll entertain the motion for resolution 23-08.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Tuck, second by Mr. Keel. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. At this time, we'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-09.
So moved. Second.
That was
Mr.
Mr.
Brzezinski.
Bursky. Thank you. Motion by Mr. Bursky, second by Mr. Tan. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Thank you. Technical Planning Committee, Mr. Bursky.
Just first say I'm not sick. I've got a bad allergy. I just took a Zyrtec, so bear with me. The Technical Planning Committee met on Tuesday, May 9th, and we did discuss the future of our funding, including the transformative projects in the 2050 plan, and the committee asked that those be considered for funding priorities in 2029, but that's getting way ahead of what we're going to be dealing with today. So there are two actions for consideration today. The first action is Resolution 2306, Fiscal Year 2022-2026 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment 2209. Mr. Bradsky will first provide a summary of the 30-day comment period for the amendment and explain the action. The comment report starts on page 13 of your packet, followed by the resolution. The Technical Planning Committee recommends adoption of Resolution 2306. Mr. Bradsky.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and other members of the NERC Executive Board. I have one resolution and amendment before you, Resolution 23-06, Fiscal Amendment 22-09, and is shown on pages 14 to page 46 of your packet. The projects listed in these amendments were released for public comment on April 19th and closed on May 10th. As stated in the public comment report on page 13, NERC did not receive any comments on any of the projects in the proposed amendment. Now, prior to sending these amendments out for public comment, we did send these amendments to members of the Intergovernmental Consultation Group, or the ICG, for their comments on April 17th. Written concurrence was given by Federal Highway on April 24th. Concurrence by no response was given by all the other members of the ICG on April 24th. That's for the public comment report. Moving on to the amendments. The amendments were attached to today's commission packet. Amendment, again, 22-09 contains 38 projects, which are either new or modifications for fiscal years 24, 25, 26, and beyond. And they include, NDOT has 12 new projects. That breaks down to three bridge deck overlays, 3 bridge rehabilitations, 1 drainage correction, 4 intelligent transportation systems, or ITS projects, and then 1 national electric vehicle infrastructure, or NEVI project. There were 5 new projects for low or no emission vehicles for East Chicago, LaPorte County, Lake Station, and Portage. Lake and Porter counties added 1 new bridge replacement each. Lowell had a substantial amount of funding for construction for 1 project and then elimination of another project. Michigan City had substantially more funds to construction for their streetscape project. Munster added their new RAISE grant project to the TIP. NERC added the 3 Marquette Greenway projects, broken down 1 for each county, and added the public education funds to our agreement with Drive Clean Indiana. And then Portage lastly added the Marquette Greenway Truss Bridge rehabilitation project just north of our offices here. Are there any questions?
Yes, I got an acronym check for you. On page 28 of our packet, there is an item with the lead agency, LaPorte County. It mentions deploying a ZEV for the county. What is a ZEV?
Zero emission vehicle.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Bradsky? If not, we'll move on to the second action. That's Resolution 2307, the adoption of the fiscal year 2024 Unified Planning Work Program. Tom Vanderloop will now present highlights from this document. The resolution can be found on page 47 of your packet. The Technical Planning Committee recommends adoption of Resolution 2307.
That's correct, and I believe the full document itself was distributed electronically, so hopefully everyone had a chance to review that. We are asking for approval of this Unified Planning Work Program. Before we do so, though, we'd just like to take a few moments to describe what the document is and what unique aspects we're looking at here in fiscal year 2024. I have a slideshow that I've prepared to help us. The Unified Planning Works Program, or UPWP, is a core planning document required by the U.S. Department of Transportation for all metropolitan planning organizations. So this is along with the Long-Range Transportation Plan and then the Short-Range Transportation Improvement Program. And what it is it's an approved work plan for the MPO staff. So it describes all the activities that we're undertaking with federal funding. So it also functions as kind of a financial planning document because it links that federal planning money that we receive with the actual work tasks that we're undertaking here at the agency. And there's really two sort of policy documents that this responds to. The first is, of course, our long-range transportation plan. So we have policies and strategies that we've adopted as a region and as an organization, and we seek to implement those through our actual work tasks. And then we're also trying to address the priorities of federal funding agencies. So USDOT, when they authorize transportation funding, there are some strings attached, right? They want you to perform your metropolitan planning activities in support of the national priorities. The UPWP is broken down into essentially 7 chapters, if you will, and those are correlated to our work activities. I'll be brief on this, but section 100 is administration, so that funds basically the general management of the NERC planning staff, as well as public participation, environmental justice, ADA, and the development of the UPWP itself. Section 200 refers to data collection and analysis. So this supports all the mapping activities that we do here, all the work that we do related to collection and analysis of census data. It also funds our traffic and bicycle counting programs, congestion management, travel demand modeling, and all of our air quality control activities. So this is an essential piece of our work here as an NPO. Section 300, short-range planning, that funds the development and management of the TIP. So a lot of what Charles is doing, what he presented this morning, was funded through that section. Section 400, long-range planning, that refers to development and implementation of the long-range transportation plan, as well as some regional land use planning, freight planning, corridor studies, all the projects that are really kind of forward-looking for the region. Section 500 is multimodal. That essentially funds the bike and pedestrian planning and programming that we do, as well as the transit planning that is required by the FTA. Section 600 refers to special planning activities, and that includes a number of different things, but typically these are projects that we are conducting in partnership and using consultant services to complete. So for 2014, we have programmed in that section work on local e-commerce sub-area planning. So that's an implementation of some of the trade and logistics work that's been completed here. And we also have a project funded to plan for the Gary Elevated, which is a proposed bike and pedestrian trail on an abandoned elevated railway through the middle of the city here. In addition to that, Section 600 also deals with air quality education, so our partnership with Southern Twin Cities is funded for that. And then finally, FTA subrecipient oversight. That is a program that deals specifically with our oversight of our transit agencies that are doing demand response in the county. So we have 7 sub-grantees that we work with. I don't know if you can see the numbers on the screen, but just probably can. The total federal PL, which is the planning funds, and CNEC budget this year is $3.1 million. So that is 80% federal and 20% local breakdown. So 2.4 of that, 2.4 million of that is federal funding, and it's matched by about $621,000 in local funds. I mentioned earlier that we're responsible, or we're required to be responsive to the priorities of our federal transportation funders. And the way that we do this is through what they call planning emphasis areas. Every year, every time there's a new transportation authorization, the USDOT, in conjunction with their state divisions, develops what they call planning emphasis areas. These are how they want NPOs and state departments of transportation to really focus their planning and implementation activities. So in the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, they did provide 8 planning emphasis areas. Those refer to climate change, addressing the impacts of climate change, advancing equity and justice in transportation planning, complete streets planning, public involvement, and specifically they're advocating for virtual public involvement, projects that relate to the strategic highway network, and U.S. Department of Defense coordination. You might be wondering whether or not why we would have to coordinate with the Department of Defense, but the interstate system is actually part of that strategic highway network. So our planning has to take into account that aspect of the transportation network. FLMA, Federal Land Management Agency Coordination. That's actually somewhat unique to us in the sense that we do have a national park located within our jurisdiction here, so we do coordinate with the National Park Service. Planning and environmental linkages, that refers to a process by which you kind of do early coordination with all stakeholders when you're developing transportation projects. And then finally, there's a focus on the sharing of data between local government, states, and NPOs. And the way that we've done this in our UPWP is we've kind of, this table is in fact taken from that document, so you can see each one of those planning emphasis areas lines up with one of those planning elements that I went through in the previous slide. So we're addressing all of those. One thing that's unique this year is the U.S. Department of Transportation is requiring that we set aside 2.5% of our federal planning dollars to be used for complete streets planning. Now, I think we all know that NERC has historically and continues to set aside much more than 2.5% of our federal planning dollars for complete streets. In fact, the idea of complete streets sort of permeates our entire work program. But we were required to identify a specific task that would expend these dollars specifically for complete streets. So in our UPWP this year, 2.5% of our funds is about $53,000, and we will be using that towards the very elevated trail study that I mentioned earlier, as well as plans for some complete streets corridors, which will be undertaken in coordination with local governments. And then I just want to also point out that in addition to the federal priorities and the priorities of the FTA and the Federal Highway Administration, we also have our own locally developed and locally promoted initiatives and strategies. So all of the activities that we're conducting are really trying to link back to that long-range transportation plan, which is really our set of regional policies and really kind of articulates the way we want to interpret those federal priorities. So again, this is a very busy slide. I won't read every word on it, but you can see on the left-hand side of these columns are the 16 initiatives from our 2050 long-range plan. And on the right-hand side is, again, those activities those tasks that we've identified in our UPW. So we are working very diligently to not only be responsive to the federal government, but also be responsive to our local and regional stakeholders and members here. So that is the UPWP in a nutshell. I'll entertain any questions if there are any. If not, I would just ask for approval of the resolution.
As I said, the planning committee recommends adoption of resolution 2307. Are there any questions? I don't see any.
Thank you.
The next meeting of the technical planning committee will be Tuesday, July 11th, 2023, 10 a.m. in this room. There is no TPC meeting scheduled for June. And this concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, we will entertain a motion for resolution 23-06.
You have it. Second.
Motion is second that we approve resolution 23-06. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Resolution 23-07. You can entertain a motion for that at this time.
I'll approve.
Second.
Motion is second that we approve resolution 23-07. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Brush.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, we'll go to NDOT.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to let you know again. Unfortunately, Matt usually had a family situation arise and wasn't able to do what he did this morning, and Adam Parkhouse is out of town, so sorry, I forgot to let you know ahead of time. We have no representation, but Matt wanted me to pass on that he believes you know how to get a hold of him, and if you have any issues or questions, to please go ahead and email or call him.
Thank you. Is there any other business at this time? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to bring our attention to a situation with Lake County Community Services, which we are a part of. I've been serving on that board for 23 years, as a couple other people that sit here have also served. We all see the LCCS buses traveling all over. And the problem is that we have 8 buses that are out of service because we just can't, they've outlived their usefulness at this point in time. The only alternative we're given is electric. We can't do that. It's just impossible for us to accept that. We want to look at an alternative that we can use fossil fuel buses, and they're the smaller buses. Vans aren't going to do it. We need to figure out a solution to the problem because those buses are in such bad shape, and they serve very needy purposes in our communities. They are for the disabled, they are for senior citizens who can't get to their appointments. Last night at the Dyer Town Council meeting, we invited Blossom Maybone, who is the director. She's doing a great job, but again, she brings up the fact that gasoline is costing more money. You know, we're having to pay more for insurance. We're just running out of funds, but we need to have those fossil fuel buses to be replaced with more fossil fuel buses. Propane isn't going to work. Electric isn't going to work because we serve a huge area that's not going to work. So I want to bring that to everybody's attention, how important that is, because every time you see those buses now, you're going to think, you know what? We need to do something. We need to take action on that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything to add to that?
No, I'd want to put Lisa Todd on the spot. Typically, Blossom works with Lisa in trying to figure out the procurement of buses and capital equipment. So as long as she's communicating, I don't know, Lisa, if you want to make a comment, feel free, but I don't want to put you on the spot for that.
Sadly, we are in a supply chain shortage, and this is nationwide. It's not just regional, it's not just our NPO. In particular, the cutaway vehicles, which were also known as body on chassis, which we were always purchasing from the state of Indiana's quantity purchase agreement because the pricing was already pre-negotiated and gave us and everybody the best rates, and they were easily accessible. Those were being manufactured by Ford, and that's who our contract was with, was Midwest Transit Administration, was the bus reps who were working with the Ford Manufacturing Company to obtain those, and we were running the E450s, or F450s. When the pandemic hit, Ford stopped their plants, the manufacturing shut down, and it wasn't just Ford, it's also the Chevys, the ARBOCs, the GMCs, it was nationwide, these manufacturing plants shut down. And they are starting to pick back up, but as a result, they are extremely backlogged, and we're not able to get our hands on the vehicles. Some of the other vehicles that some of our transit operators also operate, the 35-footers in East Chicago, the motor coaches in the city of Valparaiso, those vehicles are back in manufacture, and we're able to get some of those ordered as after we have some of those on order. We're still struggling to get those smaller, what we might describe as a minivan or the VOC. So we are entertaining the prospects of what other vehicle type might we be able to institute. What are our options? We're looking at some of the minivans. One of the challenges with those smaller vehicles is clearly they'll transport a smaller number of individuals. All of those vehicles must be ADA compliant, so we have to have some kind of a lift or ramp in order to satisfy Federal Transit Administration rules. So we have reached out to our subrecipients to see who might be willing to entertain that different type of vehicle, a smaller van or a minivan. So we're looking to price that. Some of the operators transport multiple wheelchair passengers at a time, and so those smaller vans aren't conducive to their transport business. And so we're still trying to find vehicles. The other thing that part of those manufacturers did was when they came back online, started focusing on the electric vehicle manufacturers. So they have started, and they have several electric vehicles on their lots. The price of those vehicles are almost 3 times as much as the gasoline vehicles. The few gasoline vehicles that are available, and as a matter of fact, we have some on order now and have had them on order for over 2 years through Midwest Transit and that Ford manufacturing plant. Those prices have gone up by 50%. So even if we actually do get those orders fulfilled, which may be possible by October or November this year, we've got to come up with an additional 50% to cover the increase in cost. So even if we do want to move forward with gas vehicles, costs have substantially increased. And so existing grants that we have are not going to cover the full amounts of those replacement vehicles. So we're also seeking to resolve that issue and looking at additional funding to fill those gaps. So I recognize it's a problem, and we are working toward resolving it, and I'll keep you up to date as soon as we've got more information.
Thank you. Any other business? Announcements?
Yes. On June 3rd, 4th, and September 23rd, come fish on Indiana State Public Waters for free. During these days, Indiana residents need neither a fishing license nor a trout or salmon stamp to fish. All other rules apply. The Cedar Lake Chamber of Commerce will be having a kids fishing day on June 3rd, and the first 100 kids that come will receive a free cane pole, and some of the businesses will be providing refreshments. And that's from 8 to noon on June 3rd. That's a Saturday.
Any other announcements? The next meeting will be July 20th, full commission meeting.
And if I could just real quick, so you approved one of the 3 major documents required of MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, such as NERC today, which was the Unified Planning Work Program. But sneak preview, the next 2 major documents will be coming in July, which is the NWI 2050 Plus, which is our long-range plan, and the 24-28 Transportation Improvement Program. So more fun to come in July.
Anything else for the good of the group?
Thank you all.